So your Husqvarna riding mower deck is making some bad noises? You've kind of gotten used to the way things are supposed to sound, but they just don't sound like that anymore. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to fix that on the cheap, as well as give you some other pointers on what else could be going on with your deck if it's not the same problem I'm having. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive right in. All right, so let me show you what's actually going on here. If you grab hold of the blade and do that, see how much slop is in there? The clicking and all that. It's not supposed to do any of that. It's supposed to be nice and tight, no clicking or any of that. I actually had two of these spindles that were doing that, and we're just gonna fix this one here in the video. All right, let's go ahead and get our cover off. Now this takes a T30, a Torx 30, just 2 bolts. Next, we're gonna relieve the idler tension by just moving this lever right here. Now we need to undo this big nut right here. This takes a 7/8 socket right here. And if you don't have a way to lock up your blade, just use a block of wood. And if you're not right on the end right here where it's convenient, there is places underneath the deck where you can brace the wood up against, so no problem there. There we go. Let's go ahead and get our belt off right here. Set that nut aside. And just give the pulley a little tap if it's not already loose. There we go. Let's kind of put the nut back on right here a little bit. And just use a block of wood and give it a tap. And we are out of there. Now here's our main problem right here. That bottom bearing is wasted. The top one seems to be fine. All right, so let's just take a quick second to show you some other potential problems with your deck. While the belt is off, go ahead and check all your other idlers. Give them a good shake, spin them, see if they're making any noise. One thing that I've seen happen to these is this is the pulley that went to this other spindle. Remember I said I had 2 of them went bad? Check the pulley. See the middle of the pulley right there? There's a kind of a spline in there. Those things can eat out sometimes, and that will cause these things to slip. Take a look at everything, see if anything's bent. Check your other pulleys right here. We got another one down there I can't reach. Make sure your idler is moving smoothly. I've seen those things freeze up where they don't want to move back and forth. All right, so we really didn't have to take the shaft out of there with the blade and all that stuff, but it sure made it a lot easier to take the blade off. I just set it flat on a table and hit it with an impact, and it came right off in 2 seconds, so there is that. So just 4 more bolts and the spindle comes out of there. And we're ready for the new one. One other thing, if you're working on the middle spindle and you need a little bit more room on top there because it's just not quite enough room, all you have to do is undo that rod in the front there by pulling that clip off. Just take the rod out and the deck will hang down and give you a little bit more room. All right, I got my new spindle here. Now this is as good a time as any to either replace or sharpen your blades. I'm gonna go ahead and replace mine. Just make sure that the center star pattern is fitting correctly. And when you install the blade, make sure that the flip is going to the upside of the deck. Go ahead and torque that to 55 foot-pounds, or good and tight if you don't have a torque wrench. All right, so let's go ahead and install the spindle. Now, some of these spindles come where the threads, where the bolts go, are not threaded. So if that happens to you, you'll have to take your bolt, and it's kind of a self-threading bolt, so you'll have to thread it in there manually, and then make your own thread. But these are already threaded. And we'll tighten the bolts up. These don't have to be super tight. Just good and snug. All right, so you might be thinking, why didn't I just replace the bearings in here? It would have been much cheaper. Well, you can do that, But unless you already have all the tools you need, by the time you buy the bearings, buy the tools, and put it all together, you might as well just replace the whole thing. And there's also a good chance that your aluminum housing might be stretched out a little bit and the bearings aren't quite fitting the way they're supposed to be. So you might go through all that trouble and still have a problem. These things are not that expensive. I think it was $28 at the time of this video for each spindle. All right, so let's go ahead and get our pulley on. Now you want to make sure that yours has this collar right here, the spacer. That'll keep the pulley from rubbing on the spindle. That's a very good fit. Now I'm going to tighten this nut down to about 90 foot-pounds, something like that. We'll go ahead and lock this one up on the side of the deck here because it's very easy right there. And there we go. Oh yeah. That clicking you're hearing is just the brackets on the deck, but the blade is tight. Spins real smooth. Let's get the belt back on. And then we'll just put the tensioning lever back on the other side to bring the belt tight again. And don't forget, this one has a grease fitting. So let's give it a good 10 squirts maybe. Why isn't this working? What's wrong with my grease gun now? All right, so if you lost track of how the belt went, here's a picture of the belt diagram in case yours is gone. Now, I didn't fool with this on this one, but if you want your spindles to last a little bit longer, you can kind of knock apart your spindle before you put it all together and check and see if they took the inner seal off of the bearings. If they didn't take the inner seal off, when you grease this, it's going to do nothing. Now, you could even go a step further and grease the bearings, kind of pre-grease them in the palm of your hand before you put it all in there, and that'll make sure they're nice and greased up before you go ahead and start everything up. All right, let's go ahead and test this and see how everything's working.